EM Weekly starting right now, bringing emergency managers from around the world together to learn, share and collaborate.
Hey, welcome to EM Weekly Show, and this is your host, Todd DeVoe, and I have with me producer Brian Colburn, and we're going to have a great conversation today just regarding the protests and everything that's going on in the world, realistically, right, with this whole thing. A very interesting turn of events that's been going on. We're doing a special live show specifically because of the dynamic movement of everything that's going on. And, I'm over here on the West Coast. We're watching Santa Monica. We're watching LA, San Diego, San Francisco, Oakland, all the major cities over here in California that have been hit. We've had protests in Orange County, California, where we're broadcasting from, although not as big as you've seen in the larger cities. And of course, New York City, Philadelphia, DC is going off. And we're going to have a long conversation about what's going on in DC. Obviously in Minneapolis, where everything started specifically on this event. And I have a different take on it that I think most people have, at least most people in the media have articulated the causes and whatnot on this particular protest. And yes, the flashpoint was definitely George Floyd being murdered. But I think there's a little bit more to this than that. We've all seen the video of George Floyd, or most of us have. If you haven't seen it, it's out there it's out there to be seen. And New York Times actually did a really good synopsis of it. And I'm not a New York Times fan, but they did a really good synopsis of it, showing video from different angles and what happened. And I actually walked away from that video, and I don't know about you, Brian, with more questions than answers of what the hell happened during that stop and subsequently led to the death of George Floyd. Derek Chauvin has been charged with second-degree murder. The other three officers that have been involved have been charged with aiding and abetting and accessory to murder, which is with the second-degree murder charge being placed on Chauvin, creates that as a felony as well. They've all been arrested and taken into custody. And at this time, as far as I know, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any of them have been released on bail, but have been moved to isolation, correct?
I think the bail hearing is set today for the three.
Mm-hmm.
Bail was given to the main offender, but he's not in bail. He's still in custody as far as I know.
What's interesting is the situation that killed, or not the situation, but the tactic that killed George Floyd has been deemed since I think it was 98 or 99, somewhere in there, in California, no longer to be able to be used on suspects. So what was happening before is, they hog tie somebody who's been combative, which is tying their hands behind their back and their legs together, right? So if you think about that, and then throwing them in the back of the police car, and there were lots of in custody deaths created by this called positional asphyxiation, and even so much so that even as working in as a medic, if you throw somebody who's combative and you put them on a backboard and you kind of sandwich them on the thing, that was killing people as well. So the positional asphyxiation has been known for a long time to be something that as soon as the person's compliant, you need to set them up, and obviously putting your knee on somebody's neck for that long period of time, creates badness, right? Or and we've seen this happen just recently in Dallas as well, with a mental patient who actually called 911 because he knew he was off his drugs. He knew that he was having some issues, and he died as they were waiting for the ambulance. So within a few months of each other, we've have two in custody deaths with the same tactic, if you will. The difference between the two is one made national media and the other one didn't. And the other one no one said anything about, and the other one has caused civil unrest throughout the United States and the world, for that matter.
Right.
So, so the actions of these officers has sparked the violence, and the question is what is the role of law enforcement? What is the role of public safety? And what is the role of emergency management in general during these times of crisis? And that's kind of what we're going to discuss a little bit about it here. Brian, like I said, he's the executive producer of the Ian Weekly Show. I asked him to be on today because obviously he's been paying attention, and he has his own show called the Drive Time OC, which is a hyper local radio show here in Orange County. And this morning we were discussing how to protect yourself from during times of civil unrest. What I mean by that is, the civilian, the person out there who doesn't need to be involved with anything, doesn't want to be involved, kind of keeping the situational awareness going on so they don't get caught up in these situations. So, Brian, what
caught up in the melee,
Yeah, I have a question for you. I don't know if you saw it, but did you see that truck driver who they arrested? They said he was driving through the crowd, but it's really just looked like from the video I've seen that he wasn't trying to drive through anybody. I mean, he started honking his horn way, 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 way back and was trying to stop. I mean, big rigs don't stop on a dime. They're not a Honda Civic.
Right.
Do you think that he was trying to hurt people?
Yeah. Like I said earlier this morning on my show, is it's easy to sit back and armchair quarterback this. We're seeing, in my opinion, what the media wants us to see. And in my opinion, they're biased. And it's easy to sit back and go, but we've learned from cases in the past that camera angle, the lack of audio, really plays a role in the perception that people may have over what's truly going on. But whether he was or wasn't, we don't know what was in his heart and mind at the time. We know big rigs don't stop on a dime, like you mentioned. There was another video I saw where I believe it was a FedEx truck, double trailer, people were jumping on, trying to open up the back and loot from the back of this trailer.
Yeah.
He started driving away, and a protester got caught up in between the two trailers. We've seen so much. And again, it's easy to sit back and speculate of what was going on, but do we truly know what's going on in their heart, in their mind at the time, given the limited information we have and what we're just seeing?
Yeah. Yesterday in Newport Beach, a guy in a Mini Cooper drove through a crowd, and his first the fence that he talked to the officers was, "Hey, I was fearful for my life. I was running. They started hitting my car." The video doesn't really support that. Now, was he trying to do it's a Mini Cooper, but was he trying to do like what happened in Charlotte? Literally, this is kind of funny, and not funny in a comedic way, but funny in an ironic way. The guy who's running through the crowd in a Mini Cooper was stopped because a guy threw his bicycle in his window. That's what stopped him. So that being said, I don't think anybody was hurt in that. I don't know, didn't see anything in the news saying that anybody was hurt, but this is not the first time we've seen this happen multiple times during protests. The protesters go on the street and to close down the freeway. That's dangerous in itself, right? How many times when you were running ambulance, how many times have we run calls where people are trying to cross the freeway and get hit?
Yeah, it's not a wise decision.
So what do we do? And I guess my thing is let's rewind this a little bit, and why we're here on Ian Weekly talking about this is we as emergency managers have to have whether it's an annex or in a plan of some sort, really be involved in the planning process for civil unrest. And I wrote a piece that I haven't produced yet, and I'm going to post it after today, and I named it "Protecting Our First Amendment Rights and Responding to Civil Unrest is not mutually exclusive." And I go into just talking about, the fact of the matter is that most of the time during these protests, you have two distinct groups. And a friend of mine who's a professor at Long Beach and I were discussing this the other day, Cal State Long Beach. We're discussing this yesterday. And he said there's two shifts, right? And during this protest, he said there's the day shift and the night shift. And in the day shift is the people who want the voices to be heard, and they're going down to City Hall and to the police station. I had a protest in my city that was completely nothing happened. I mean, they had 3 officers out to out. That's what we did, right? And now, I mean, mind you, I'm a smaller town in North Orange County. It's a bedroom community basically, and they marched from the little mall area that we have. Not a mall, it's the outdoor area, movie theaters and stuff, to City Hall, and did the silent protest over there, and where they were done. It probably took them maybe an hour total. Brian, you took video of kids just walking down the street by your office the other day, right?
Yeah, that was yesterday. And what's interesting is the fact that it seems like a lot of the peaceful protests have little to no PD anywhere in sight. But again, that's the perception of the video clips that the media is feeding us. They could be there, they could be just off camera. Todd, do you remember there were some images? We were talking about photography and perspective, and it was Marines getting off of helicopters, and they were laying down in the prone and rifle over their backpack and sitting there, and it just looked like a war zone. And then the same photographer stepped back and took a shot of the surrounding area, and there was other press there, and there was family there. It was a dog and pony show. Right. Same situation, different angle, completely different meaning or interpretation of that same photo.
Sure.
And I caution people to keep that in mind when you're seeing something on TV or when you're seeing a video. There's my story, Todd's story, and somewhere in between is the truth.
I mean, speaking of that too, and there's been some super lazy journalism going on. And I saw a post where the news media put a picture of Philadelphia and it looked like Philadelphia was just on fire. Right. And it was, right. I mean, the photograph was, and then come to find out it was a stock image from a trailer of World War Z, where they used that same exact photo or the video in World War Z to show Philadelphia burning. So it was CGI,
right?
And it's like, that's lazy. I mean, that's some intern looking for a photograph and just going through stock images and goes, oh wow, look at this, is on fire, and posting it and not doing the research on it. But the thing is, when media does that, it reduces their effect, right? And it also makes you not trust necessarily what
credibility's blown.
Yeah, completely.
I mean, remember 3 weeks ago when it was the beaches in Orange County?
Oh, yeah.
It was a photograph taken from the ground, and it looked like hundreds of people. And then the same time and day, from a police helicopter, they take an image, and everyone was well dispersed.
Mm-hmm.
Same situation, roughly the same time. And again, completely different interpretations of the same situation just because of angle.
What I find interesting too, and just in the conversations with people that people have, and even the news media, as they're covering these protests, even the peaceful side of it, it's I don't want to say positive. It's not the word I'm looking for, but definitely not negative, right? And they haven't questioned the need to protest, right? And I never question the need to protest, by the way. I think that the First Amendment, in my piece, protecting our First Amendment is crucial as people, as servants of in public agencies. It is crucial for us to protect the constitutional given rights that we have, right? And First Amendment being the first one. And the idea is that how, as emergency managers, what we can do to facilitate the peaceful expression in the First Amendment. And I think that's very important for us to do, and we need to take that seriously. But going back to the protests that were happening, and again, I'm not giving any value judgment at all to either side, any of these protests, right? In this case here, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with anything that's happening here. I'm talking specifically the practical application of what we do in our craft as emergency managers, and protecting the First Amendment right, free speech, and for how do we plan for these. So in various different areas, and the Newport Beach one is a very good example, the different protests that have occurred where they were asking for the economy to be opened up. And you hear the pundits saying, oh, well, this is very short-sighted on these people's parts. They're out there protesting, they're not wearing masks, they are endangering grandma, they have all this. Is some of the stuff that's being said. And then turn around to these protests, and these are just weeks after. It's not even like months or whatever. This is just literally a couple of weeks after the people in Michigan were out there doing their thing, and these people are out protesting without masks, and you don't hear the same criticism coming out from the media. So I just found that kind of one of those interesting facts. I'm like, and then the funny part about it is, it's like the other comparison that they had is like, well, why weren't the law enforcement tear gassing these guys that were standing on the streets on the capital of this was in Michigan, because they had guns and whatnot, and they should have been tear gassing them as well. And again, I think the circumstances are a little bit different, where you're not seeing the peaceful protesters in LA. I can't talk about every single city, but what I've been following, I haven't seen the peaceful protesters being tear gassed. And I know, Brian, you talked about this morning about them being rounded up, but I wanted to tell you, but I wasn't able to jump back on, is that that's a tactic that these particular organizers are using to, they want to overwhelm the jail system with, right. So that's why they want hundreds and hundreds of people to be arrested. And these people that are being arrested right now have stated that they're willing to be arrested for the cause. It's a misdemeanor. Yeah. Failure to disperse, and so it's planned for them. It's a part of this protest is for them to be arrested. So it's not like the PD's picking on these poor peaceful protesters and not the.
And that's not how I implied that. How I implied it is 2 blocks away, they're looting.
Yeah, right. No, absolutely.
And if you're there to protect and serve, where's the most good going to come from? Rounding up somebody who wants to go to jail, or turning the corner and stopping looting.
Right. And I think, I mean, again, I don't think that there's 2 separate things. I think that, you can, I don't know. I mean, I think that has to be done. I mean, they're taking space up on the road. They're doing this on purpose. They park vehicles in a way that other cars. So the protesters, smartly so, parked vehicles so the road was blocked. So basically putting the safety vehicles in there. They put themselves inside that barrier so that they knew they weren't going to get run over, sat on the ground and put their hands up over their heads and said, okay, we're willing to be arrested. And again, it's a show of defiance, but well planned. And this kind of parallels into my point here. When you have the organizers and of these events, you can quickly, and they self-identify as leaders, right? In some cases, when it's an organized protest that we know it's going to occur, such as a planned protest, where they take permits out and whatnot, we know who's doing this. And I think that as emergency managers, number one, if you're not in that room, you need to make sure that you are in that room when they're doing the planning for these protests, because we could be that neutral third party. People don't necessarily know what we do, which it could be a good thing in this case, where we can walk into the room with the protest organizers and say, "Hey, how you doing? My name is Todd DeVoe. I'm the city emergency manager. I'm here to discuss with you how this protest is going to go down, what your goals are, objectives are, what the rules are, and put the rules of engagement out." And again, talking to Joe yesterday, he's very politically active. He goes to these protests. He's a little bit left leaning, very that way, and so he's marched in a few of these things. And I asked him what it's like to be on the ground marching, and he's like, "Yeah, in these planned protests, they're very well organized. They have routes that are defined. They have people that are on the sidewalk reminding you to be nice to each other and to not incite anything, and this is where you're going." And it's very well done. When it comes to the looters, that's a whole different story. And this is where I go into the idea that protecting the First Amendment right, protecting those protesters, those that have grievances that they want to get out. They can say what they want to say. They could yell at us. We're paid. The law enforcement officers that are in the front line, they could yell at them all they want. They can say what they want. Now, the thing is that we have to pay attention to are the agitators, right? And we've seen this in the May Day protests a few years ago when LAPD, they're at Leimert Park. They called for, this was the assembly is now unlawful. And at this point, the black box, the anarchist, started chucking rocks and bottles full of urine at law enforcement. But the visual is really poor because the black box, these people have tactics, right? They practice this stuff. And so now they're 2-3 rows behind women and children. And so when LAPD went out to go get the bad guys, it looks like they're putting sticks on women and children who are there to protest. And so, understanding that we have, and they learn from that, right? If you look at the protests today, when they give the order to disperse, they're waiting 45 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer sometimes. And they're waiting for those who don't want to be involved in the melee to leave. And then now they know it does two things. One is it reduces the number of people that are in the streets. And the second thing is then who's left over are the ones that either are willing to be arrested and they probably won't fight you, or are ready to rumble, right? And so you're prepared to take on those tasks. And I think when it comes to this, now you're seeing that bifurcation, and like you're saying earlier, Brian, of the peaceful protesters that are sitting down the road with their hands up, getting ready to be arrested, and then 2 blocks over, the agitators that are there to cause problem. And I would venture to say in this case that the agitators probably would be there to agitate no matter what, and aren't really there for the protest of the death of George Floyd. What do you say?
I completely agree. I think the agitator wants to hit and run so he can come back and hit again somewhere else or later on.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they're cornered, they're going to continue to agitate. But it's at the end of the day, there are subsets out there. We have those that want to protest the death, and we have those that are using this as an opportunity to, obtain merchandise to sell on OfferUp.
Yep.
And then we have those that want to go out and destroy property and hurt other people, and those other people being peace officers. And it's a complicated situation, and even if you're on the ground, you're not going to get the whole story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know a young lady who was in LA protesting this weekend, and when they turned a corner and came across a burning police car, yeah, it's time to go. And right. They left and sought safety, which in my opinion is a good decision, because, I've said it on the other show. If you look like a duck and it's duck season,
yeah,
bad things are going to happen. So that's my view.
Let's take a quick break and hear from our advertisers. And when we come back, I want to discuss engaging the community after the protest, what the recovery looks like, and some of the community groups that are already stepping forward to clean up.
Seconds count during an emergency. That's why at Titan HST, we connect people with the latest technology possible, whether it's mesh networking, augmented reality, or real-time translation, allowing people who need help to find help immediately. Better matters because lives matter.
And thank you for listening to our sponsor. And without them, we could not put on the quality shows that we've been putting on, and absolutely couldn't put this live show on. And you know, hit them up, talk to them, say, hey, I heard you on the Weekly, and then you want to learn more about the product, because actually during these times right now of trouble, communicating with the community, right, is huge. And Titan HST allows you to do that seamlessly in two-way communication. And in some cases, you can actually do a little bit more and get information back from them as well. So I think it's a great tool, and reach out to Titan HST and tell them you heard them here on EM Weekly.
And they've got a great team. Everybody at Titan's wonderful, and we appreciate our relationship that we have with them. So thank you, everybody at Titan.
Absolutely. And they have good cookies at the demonstration, not demonstrations, at the oh my gosh, lost my mind, at the expos and stuff that you guys will all be going to. So if Titan HST is at an expo, go there. They have great cookies. So
yeah, they do.
So going into that, so we're talking about the community and what it looks like. It was so funny because watching some of the protest videos and stuff, it's kind of weird when you start recognizing people that on both sides of the protest. It's kind of blows my mind a little bit sometimes. Yesterday I saw some video from Santa Monica with the CERT team out there, the Community Emergency Response team out there, painting over graffiti, cleaning up broken glass, and just really being involved in cleaning up Santa Monica.
You need an uninterrupted conference call.
I have an uninterrupted conference call.
Conference call coming on.
And then Long Beach, the community members came out in Long Beach. Santa Ana had community members coming out. So I think that part of the healing process for the community after such an event is engaging the community by having them help rebuild. And I know, Brian, you're saying that you had some trepidation of businesses that felt that they were not protected reopening, but does the community coming out and helping rebuild kind of take away that pain?
I think it does, but at the end of the day, it's $1.00 decision. I was watching news footage of a local grocery store. It's the only grocery store in the community. We've heard about food deserts before. You've talked about the lack of fresh food in some neighborhoods, and this neighborhood market that this community shops at was destroyed. And citizens sweeping aisles of just broken glass and food all over the place, down the aisles, past the registers, and out the front door. And they said they were going to rebuild, but at the end of the day, it's money, dollars and cents. Do we have enough insurance? Can we afford to rebuild? Number two, do we want to rebuild in a community that allowed this to happen? And that's, I think that's a question of the heart, not the mind. But you see some of the destruction in Santa Monica that occurred, and it's like, if I were Patagonia, would I want to open up a store in Santa Monica again?
And for those of you that don't know Santa Monica necessarily, from out the world here that are listening today, and the Santa Monica, the areas that got hit were very, very upscale, and like Patagonia, which it's the reason why it's called Patagucci, right? REI was hit. Some of the higher end stores like that were completely decimated. And Brian's right. I was watching some of the footage where cars were pulling up, like they were coordinating, right? And so the cars were pulling up, and people were running out of the stores and stuffing so much stuff in the cars that they couldn't close the trunk, right? And they're reselling that stuff. This is not people that are there to protest, Floyd being killed. They're looking to make some money off the death of this man, which really kind of irritates the crap out of me. But but that being said, a guy, you have a friend of yours that's a store manager for a Columbia outlet, right? And talk a little bit about that.
He was down with contractors boarding up. Fortunately, it held night one. Day two, he went back to reinforce, but neighboring stores, and this is right near the convention center. Todd, you and I left the convention center, or would meet at the Old Dubliner breakfast before IEM.
Right.
And they broke into the Old Dubliner and trashed the bar. And it's again, back to the point of A, can we afford it? B, do I want to rebuild here if I can afford it?
Right. And everybody who's listening, if you guys have been to the IEM conference in Long Beach, the area that got hit was right where all of our activities for the conference happened. Yep. The Old Dubliner across the street, the
hotels right there,
the Pike place, where the aquarium is, the Pacific, all that stuff was impacted. Did they go into the aquarium? I was wondering that. I didn't see that.
I did not see nor hear about the aquarium being breached. It appears that down there, I did not personally see any footage of graffiti like we've seen everywhere else. And hopefully they didn't. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could just see these people going in and trying to break the glass. And
yeah, me too.
It's a beautiful aquarium.
Gorgeous, yeah.
But I did not hear of. So
I actually like the aquarium of the Pacific better than Monterey. So I'm just going to put that out there. So yeah, I know everybody in Monterey is probably throwing rocks at me right now, but it's just my opinion, right? But yeah, I mean, but going back to the community groups, there's always this debate on do we use like CERT, right? Like what is the role of the community emergency response team? And sometimes using them outside of the traditional what you think of the role is of the disaster response. Do you CERT, like do you CERT to go and help with the cleanup?
I think a good use of CERT would be maybe coordinating cleanup, helping with logistics, setting up first aid, hydration stations, cooling stations. But I think that getting the community alongside peace officers cleaning up is going to instill more pride in that community. And it might act as a deterrent in the future, my opinion. If people come in and destroy, and then other people come in and clean up, and not every citizen's going to go down and volunteer. However, the leadership will, in my opinion. And I think side by side, solidarity will go a long way. In Santa Ana, the morning after, I got to witness police cruisers slow rolling down the street on the PA, thanking the citizens of Santa Ana for coming out and cleaning up. Now, I'm not sure what time the protest broke up that evening, but the next morning, the early news reports, broken windows, graffiti down. I mean, this is probably a 400-foot wall and graffiti all the way down it. By 1 p.m., pristine. The graffiti was gone. There was a gentleman out there that does a car wash service out of his van. He was out there pressure washing graffiti on the retail side of the street. And I think it's cool. And some of the peace officers stopped. They got out of their car. They were thanking and speaking with the community. And Todd, you and I have had the conversation. I'm a firm believer cops need to live in the community that they police, and they need to get out of their car and learn who's on the beat,
right?
And walk and talk. And And without those relationships, it's them and us. If there's a relationship there, it's Bill.
Right.
It's not the cop, it's Bill.
It's funny. I use this example, and I know it's Hollywood or I guess Broadway, but the West Side Story, where they go, hey, Officer Grumpke or whatever his name is. They had the whole little song about him, and that's the beat cop, and he knew the kids, right? And that was written that way because that's the way the beat cops were in New York back in the day. They knew the kids, whether right or wrong, right? But they, I remember as a kid that I got in trouble one time, and I was more afraid of getting in trouble with my dad after finding out. I mean, then I was from getting the ticket I was speeding. That's what I was doing. And instead of getting a ticket, they brought me to my dad, told him what I was doing.
That was the worst, man. Me in the hand and my BB gun in the other of a deputy walking me home.
Yeah.
Like, oh man.
The guy lived in the guy who got me, lived in my neighborhood, and I've known him since I was a kid, and
right.
It's his Officer Cox was his name, and I went to school with his daughter, and it's like you know them. It's like you're not it's a different time, and small town, right? Again, it's not LA City, but if you break into neighborhoods, it could be that way. But anyway, I want to go back to CERT, right? Should we I think so, and this is my opinion. I think that we should actually add the CERT or the volunteer programs into our plan on the recovery, because the recovery portion of what we do, right? And if you take a look at most complaints that we've had for natural disasters or any kind of things, right? It's not necessarily the response, right? The law enforcement officers, the firefighters, the EMS, they go out and they do what they're doing. But at the end of the day, when people get really agitated, is fixing it and making it whole again. And if we talk about community resilience, right, that part of it, I think using the volunteer programs and using programs like CERT, and if you don't use CERT, whatever volunteer programs that you have in your community, using them to go and help with the repairs, help with not necessarily the repairs like building glass in a building again, but at least cleaning up and making your local businesses feeling good. The Walmarts, the Targets, the Lowe's, those people, they have teams that are going to do it, right? But I'm talking about the mom and pop shops, the delis, the dry cleaners, and all those type of businesses that necessarily need the help, right? We're going through COVID right now, and we're losing businesses left and right to COVID, and basically after an event, you're losing about 1 in 4 businesses will close, due to the crisis. Now let's add this. We're just about to open up here in Orange County in LA. Add this protest to this, and where the businesses are now damaged. How many of them can open up again?
Yeah, it's going to be economically devastating. I mean, if you closed and lost months worth of business because of COVID, and then your store's trashed and your inventory's gone, and it's not going to be good. And you know what? Recovery. Todd, you and I had a conversation a long time ago regarding the 9th Ward in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And its state. And then there was the tsunami that hit Thailand. And 12 months later, it was a beautiful resort again. Hotels rebuilt. I mean, and recovery seems to be something we don't do well.
Yeah. You're right. And I have to, that's been one of my things when I moved into education and teaching, I teach recovery, and I think that we do have a lot of work to do in the recovery section specifically, and I think there's different things about it. One is just the way that we function, but there's also, I think recovery starts with resilience, right? And what I mean by this, I know it seems to be like the buzzword, resilience. I mean, the Rockefeller Foundation came out with the 100 really resilient cities, and there's a lot of buzz around it. But and did I bite, did I drink the Kool-Aid with the resiliency? Maybe, right? And you can, call me guilty on it, right? But the concept of it is just is brilliant, that we are looking at recovery prior to recovery, and we're bringing the community in to that process before the great earthquake occurs or whatever, right? And so when we look at some of our failures in recovery, it's local businesses aren't insured, right? Because it's an expense and it's a risk, right? And so they go, okay, should I be insured? Should I not? And so that really kind of puts us behind the eight ball. And we don't have huge, and I don't think we need to have, by the way, we don't have huge government expenditures on recovery necessarily. Where you take a look at Sumatra and you take a look at Penang and what, it wasn't necessarily the local government, or the local businesses that recovered. The government put a lot of money into it, and we're just not built that way. Right or wrong, again, not value judging. I'm just saying this is what the facts on the ground are. So, could we do a better job? We do have small business administration loans and things like this that can help out, but at the end of the day, the statistics bear out that 1 in 4, and most of those small businesses that close are women-owned minority businesses, right? Hair salons, dry cleaners, things like that where people could quickly move on to somebody else, because if they're not open within like 3 days, I did the study back in 99 when I was an undergrad, and it's somewhere along the lines of, if they're not open within 3 days, people go and use those services elsewhere. It is what it is, and that's what the statistics bear out. But again, we could do things prior to anything happening to help with them. There's go behind here. I have a book over here that's like it's kind of a pamphlet book that you can hand out to people that actually steps them through how to do a recovery plan for small businesses. And I think I had her on the show, and it was pretty amazing. So anyway, I know we're getting here close to the end. We ran over a little bit more than normally, about almost 10 minutes or so. The conversation was great, and I know we got to get going. I do appreciate everybody being here with us today. Brian, I appreciate you coming on the show in the last second here to have the conversation that we have, because I know this is very painful for everybody. It's painful for the communities that are being affected. It's painful for the family who lost George Floyd. It's painful for the community, that's especially the African American community, who feels that their voices are never heard. And now we have another death in custody, and there's a lot of stuff that we need to work through. I don't necessarily agree with some of the tactics that are being out there, especially with the looting and whatnot. But we're hearing this, and as public servants, I think that we can learn from this, and I think we need to plan for more. And I think that if we can have open dialogue and open communication, we can avoid the tragedy that's here. Brian?
I completely agree. We have a long way to come. And question for you, and excuse my ignorance, I'm not an emergency manager. Where are they? I know they're not the PIO, and the mayor seem to be getting all the spotlights, but it would be cool to see a city EM out in front and talking about this. It would be cool to work relations into an EM plan. Speaking of resiliency, you guys do national nights out. Cool. Law enforcement, fire, community, getting to know each other. We need more of that. A lot of cities now are coffee with cops, and, they're doing things in local communities so you can, put a name to the face, and it's not just the guy in the cop car with the blue lights. We need more of that. And we need dialogue. We need meaningful dialogue, my opinion. Again, cops need to walk a beat, park the car, walk the park,
Absolutely. Well, until next week, everybody, it's been a pleasure, and stay safe.
Take care.